Hello, I'm Christine Manning with the International Spirits School, and welcome to the advanced module on spirits made from fruits and other brandies. This is a diverse category from the standpoint of raw materials, distillation locations, and distillation techniques. It covers those spirits made from grapes or other fruits outside of our cognac and armagnac, and is interesting, rich, and tasty nonetheless. Today we will cover topics ranging from Pisco to Calvados, German Geist, Grappa, and a few in between. Let's jump in. In today's lecture, we are looking at other brandies and fruit spirits, starting with Brandy de Jerez. If you have a background in either spirits or wine production, this topic is for you. If not, hang in there. Talking Brandy de Jerez, which is very well known for its aging system. Before we get to our aging though, we need our base wine. It is typically from Jerez, a simple white grape that was produced in La Mancha. Importantly though, our spirit has to be aged in Jerez. Distillers use both pot and column stills to create three classes. Holandés is distilled to 70%. Aguardientes must reach 70 to 86%, and destillados has to be greater than 86%. Now these levels are important because Spanish law requires that at least half of the final blend must be spirit distilled to 86% ABV or less. If you're like me, now might be a good time to hit pause and review those numbers. Let's move on to that Solera system. The Solera system is a constant blending process where spirit moves through different groups of barrels or criaderas. These barrels, stacked on top of each other, start at the top and are systematically blended until they reach the final Solera, getting its name from its location on the ground, holding the oldest brandy. These barrels have been previously used for sherries. These previous contents, depending on the type of sherry, whether it was dry or sweet, or even the color of the juice it held, will give differing notes. Walnut, fig, prune could all be examples of flavors you'd get. Aging minimums for brandy range from 6 months minimum to 3 years for our Grand Reserva styles. And once ready for finishing, Brandy de Jerez is often sweetened and at greater amounts than other brandies as a final adjustment to balance out that high proof requirement. Now, let's hold on to a few of these concepts as we travel down to South Africa. Here, brandy also uses a mix of distillation strengths. The legal definitions will also reflect the blend composition. Starting with Pot Still Brandy, you guessed it, it must be distilled in pot stills, and it has to reach a maximum of 75% ABV. These have to also be aged for a minimum of 3 years in oak. Blended brandy is different because it can use column-distilled spirits that can reach up to 95% ABV, a feature that is unique to South Africa. A blended brandy must contain at least 30% pot still brandy and a maximum of 70% unaged grape-based spirit. Staying in the Southern Hemisphere, let's shift to Pisco. Pisco is highly aromatic from grapes. Beyond that, the style and the battle of where to originate from differ, and often contemptuously. In no particular order, I promise. We will start with Peruvian Pisco. I like to think P for Pisco and Peruvian purity. In Peru, law requires Pisco to be made from 8 approved grape varieties, and it has to be single pot distilled. Post-distillation additives are not allowed, including water or sugar. Because of this, it is bottled at the exact strength it comes off the still, between 38 and 48% ABV. It must be stored for a minimum of 3 months in inert vessels. So if you're looking to try a spirit that is an expression of pure raw material, distillation strength, and flavor, go to Peruvian Pisco. Chilean Pisco, in contrast, offers relatively more flexibility. It typically uses double pot distillation with a maximum strength of 73%. It requires a minimum 60 days rest period, which could be inert or wood vessels. Local Rayuli wood is often used as it contributes more to texture as it is a more neutral type of wood. Chilean Pisco can be diluted before bottling, with legal terms defined by bottling strength. Reservado is at 40%, Gran Pisco at 43%, and sounds worth trying, don't you think? Now moving into Pomace, or grape skin brandy. Most of the large winemaking regions of the world will make use of this byproduct of winemaking. It could be in the form of livestock feed, agricultural use, or a consumable good, which is what we're looking at next. Grappa is our benchmark for Pomace brandy. Just like in cognac, using a fruit high in sugar content does pose a challenge. For Grappa, grape skin and stems are vulnerable to spoilage, which can produce high levels of methanol if stored improperly. To help, distillers will want to ensure that they are receiving a fresh product. Now, to prevent solids from burning, Grappa stills will be specially designed, usually using steam injection perforated baskets. This will allow for efficient and gentle flavor extraction. Now, just like wine, you can see black or white grape Pomace spirit. Grappa specifically must be distilled to less than 86% ABV. For aging, both inert and oak aging is practiced. Resting in inert vessels allows the flavors to harmonize and develop a smoother mouthfeel. Aging in wood will allow oxidative flavors to develop. The aging designations seen on Grappa are Vecchia for a 12 months minimum period and Reserva for 18 months minimum. Ash and chestnut wood are often preferred over oak, which is considered too strong. Moving countries and fruit type, let's look at Calvados. Produced in the cool northwest regions of France, the fruit changes to pear and apples to make Calvados. Now, even though we have a couple different fruit types, as expected from the French, production is tightly controlled. There are 3 distinct appellations, and the main difference lies in the still type and fruit content. The one uniting law, however, is that our spirit cannot exceed 72%. The first appellation we will look at is Calvados Pays d'Auge. Here, double copper pot still distillation is required. The base cider is restricted to a maximum of 30% pears. Next, Calvados Domfrontais requires a copper double column stills. Stills can have a maximum of 28 plates, and conversely, the cider must contain a minimum of 30% pears. Now, all Calvados must be aged in oak. 2 years minimum is standard for Calvados AOC, but 3 years for Calvados Domfrontais. Traditionally, aging takes place in huge old oak vessels known as foudres. These things are giant, often sized between 1,000 and 10,000 liters to promote that slow oxidation and smoothing out of flavors. And for our final category, we look to Central Europe, where there's highly regarded fruit spirits that are the focus. Produced from Alsace through Germany to Austria, Switzerland, and northern Italy. We are looking at spirits that are differentiated primarily by how the fruit's flavor is captured, and they are famed for their clear look, pure aroma, and smooth texture. Under EU regulations, these spirits must be distilled to 86% ABV or less. The raw materials used fall into 3 main classes, the first being seeded fruit. The most popular fruit is pear, such as Poire Williams, as well as apples and quince. Stone fruits like cherries are used in kirsch, plum for mirbel and ketch, and apricots, and also berries or soft fruits, notably raspberries and strawberries. So if you've been with us for our entire series, you know how sugar is accessed in various fruit sources, and this will determine how these will be processed. The same applies with all these Central European spirits. So for Wasser or Brand, this will indicate a fruit spirit that has undergone alcoholic fermentation, typically producing a liquid of roughly 4 to 5% ABV. Fermentation adds complexity through yeast-derived aromas. Many of these fermentations result in high, unavoidable levels of methanol, which has to be carefully managed during distillation. When using a stone fruit, distillers may include the stones to impart that distinct marzipan almond notes, like we see in kirsch. The stones, though, cannot be damaged, otherwise it will release poisonous chemicals. Typically, these will be removed before distillation to avoid giving the spirit an overwhelming aroma. Geist means maceration was used. This is often due to necessity because soft fruits like raspberries or strawberries don't have a high liquid content, so they have to be gently mashed and soaked in a diluted neutral spirit before redistillation. Distillers choose Geist to highlight fruit aromas without the added aromas from fermentation, or when the fruit does not produce sufficient enough juice practical for fermentation. Geist can also be made from other raw materials like hazelnuts. These types of spirits are typically batch distilled using simple pot or hybrid stills. Hybrid stills are more common because they allow for more precise temperature control, and short column stills, often with a deflegmator, helps with precise separation of those fractions. Also, these stills can be run slowly to allow for those precise cuts further and to preserve those delicate fruit flavors, avoiding including group 1 and group 3 fractions. So if we went through all of this effort to highlight our primary fruit aromas, resting is no different. Inert vessels may be used for aging to harmonize flavors. Over years, mouth-filling textures evolve, even in inert vessels. If wood is used, oak is generally avoided because it can be too overpowering. Other woods, like chestnut and ash, keep wood flavors subtle while allowing oxidative dried fruit aromas to develop. And distillers usually want to avoid developing rancio from long aging because it could obscure those fruit aromas. We have covered a lot. From the mandated single distillation of Peruvian Pisco to the unique Solera system of Brandy de Jerez and the precise definitions separating brand from Geist. If you can understand the regulations, it will lead you to the raw materials, distillation techniques, and aging methods used. Better yet, pour yourself a sample to help ground your learning. Thank you for joining me. Cheers.